I want you to understand something before I begin. I am not telling you this story for sympathy. I am not telling it because I want you to believe May gave up on being believed a long time ago. I am telling it because I made a promise to myself. On the last night I spent inside Harrow Creek Correctional Facility, that if I ever made it out, if I ever sat in a warm room with a cup of coffee and the sound of normal life around me again, I would tell everything, every detail, every night, every rule, every mistake, and every moment I came close to never leaving at all. My name is Daniel Marsh. I am 39 years old. I live alone in a small apartment in a town you have never heard of. I work as a building maintenance contractor. I have been doing this kind of work for 15 years. Before Harrow Creek, I had worked in empty warehouses and decommissioned factories and old municipal buildings. I was good at it. Was comfortable with silence and solitude in the particular way that abandoned places feel at night, different from how they feel in the day, heavier, somehow more present, as if the emptiness itself is a living thing. I was comfortable with all of that, or I thought I was, until Harrow Creek showed me the difference between a building that is simply empty and a building that only appears to be. Job listing appeared on a Thursday morning in the first week of March. Remember the exact day because I had just lost a contract, a long-term maintenance position at an old textile warehouse that the owners had decided to sell. I was looking for work. The listing was simple: caretaker, needed for long-term position at decommissioned correctional facility, basic maintenance and security duties, accommodation provided on site if required, competitive compensation, previous experience with large-scale facilities, preferred contact number below. I called the number that same Thursday morning. A woman answered. Her voice was calm and professional and completely neutral, the kind of voice that gives nothing away. She asked me about my experience. I told her. She asked if I was comfortable working alone for extended periods. I said yes. She asked if I had any history of anxiety disorders or sleep difficulties. I said no, and then she paused just for a moment, and she asked me the question I have thought about many times since. She said, "Mr. Marsh, are you the kind of person who can follow instructions precisely, even when those instructions seem unusual, even when you do not understand the reason behind them?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Good, the job is yours. If you want, I'd want you to come in Monday morning to meet the outgoing caretaker and receive your orientation." I said yes. Again, I wrote down the address. I hung up the phone, and I had absolutely no idea what I had just agreed. Toy drove out to Harrow Creek on a Monday morning in early March. The drive took 40 minutes from my apartment. The last 10 minutes of it were on a road that I am not sure deserves to be called a road. More of a suggestion: cracked asphalt, with weeds pushing up through every joint, flat gray land on either side, nothing growing taller than my knee. Sky was low and colorless, the way it gets in early March when winter has not quite decided to leave. And then the building appeared. I have tried many times to describe my first sight of Harrow Creek Prison. The honest answer is that the word that came to mind immediately was wrong. Not dangerous, not frightening, just wrong. The wrong. The way something is wrong when it does not fit where it has been placed. The building was enormous, 4 separate cell blocks arranged in a rough square with a central yard in the middle guard, towers at each corner, all the windows barred, most of them broken. The brick was a dark reddish brown that had gone almost black. In places from decades of weather, the fence around the perimeter was old chain link topped with rusted barbed wire. Some sections had collapsed inward, as if the fence had grown tired of standing. The whole thing sat in the middle of that flat gray land like something that had been dropped there from a great height and had not quite landed right. I sat in my car for a moment before getting out, not because I was afraid. I want to be clear about that. I was not afraid. I had worked in places that looked just as derelict and felt nothing. I sat there because something about the building was pulling at my attention in a way I could not immediately explain, like a sound at the edge of hearing or a shape at the edge of vision, something you cannot quite catch directly. Only since he got out of the car and I met Callum. Callum was the outgoing caretaker. He had held the position for 4 years. He was perhaps 60 years old, lean, in the way that people become lean when they have been somewhere difficult. For a long time his handshake was firm, but his eyes were not on mine when we shook. They were on the building behind me, as if he needed to keep track of it, as if looking away from it for too long was something he had learned not to do. He took me on. A turret was fast, too fast, the kind of pace you keep when you want to get something finished. He showed me the main entrance and the security panel just inside. I've showed me the caretaker office, which was a small room just off the main entrance. Corridor with a desk and a chair and a cot against one wall and a telephone on the desk. He showed me the generator room in the basement and how to restart it if it cut out. He showed me the maintenance supplies in the old staff room off cell block. A showed me the route for the rounds twice a night, 10 p.m. and 3 m cell blocks, A and B and C, in that order, lower tier first, then upper tier, yard if weather permitted, then back to the office. He showed me all of this at a pace that suggested he had done it many times in his head and wanted to get through it as quickly as possible in reality. And then he sat me down at the small table in the caretaker office. He slid a piece of paper across the table toward me. The paper was old, not ancient, but old, the kind of old that comes from sitting in a drawer for years. The handwriting on it was clear and careful printed, rather than cursive, as if the person writing it wanted to make absolutely certain every word was readable. At the top, it said, "Rules for the caretaker of Harrow Creek Correctional Facility. Please read carefully. Please follow precisely." Callum said nothing. He just watched me read. Rule 1 rounds are at 10 p.m. and 3 am, not 9:50 or 3:10 and 3. The timing is not arbitrary. Do not vary it. Rule 2 cell block D is on the far side of the central yard. It is padlocked. You do not have a key to cell block D. You do not need a key to cell block D. Not approach the door to cell block D after dark under any circumstances. Rule 3. At some point you will hear counting. It will come from cell block B. Upper tier. It will sound like a man counting slowly and steadily. Do not count along. Do not call out. Do not try to locate the source. Leave cell block B immediately, and do not return until your next scheduled round. Rule 4. The lights in the central yard will activate on their own on certain nights. There is no electrical explanation for this. Do not investigate. Do not enter the yard when the lights are on. Wait in the office until the lights go off on their own, then resume your round. Rule 5. You may find food in the kitchen that you did not bring and did not prepare. Do not consume it. Do not examine it closely. Remove it from the building immediately and dispose of it outside. The perimeter fence rule 6-something in cell 14. On cell block, a lower tier will attempt to engage you in conversation as you pass it. Will sound completely human. It may say things that suggest it knows personal information about you. Keep walking, do. Not stopped. Do not respond. Do not look directly into the cell rule. 7. On the last Friday of every month, do not conduct your 3 a.m. round. At 2:45 a.m., go to the caretaker office, lock the door. Put on headphones with audio playing. Do not remove the headphones until 4 a.m. Do not open the office door until 4 a.m. Resume your round at 4 a.m. as normal. Rule 8. If you see a person in the building who is not you, do not speak to them. Do not follow them. Return to the caretaker office immediately. Lock the door. Call the number written on the wall above the telephone. Wait for instructions. Rule 9. Some mornings you will find objects moved from where you left them. Do not dwell on this. Return objects to their original positions. This is normal. Rule 10. If at any point you feel with certainty that something is standing directly behind, you do not turn around, walk forward. Do not increase your pace beyond a brisk walk. Do not run, walk until you are in a different room or corridor, then continue your round. As normal, I finished reading. I looked up at Callum. He was already standing, his jacket zipped, his bag on his shoulder. He had been preparing to leave while I asked him who had written the rules. He said the caretaker before him. I asked how long that person had been at Harrow Creek. He said 2 years. I asked why they left. Callum was quiet for a moment. Then he said he made his choice and left. I asked what that meant. Callum picked up his bag. He said, follow the rules, all of them, every time, without exception. Then he walked out of the office. I heard his footsteps down the main corridor, heard the main door open. I heard it close. I heard his car start outside, and then I heard it drive away, and the sound faded, and there was nothing left but silence and the building and me. The first 3 days were uneventful. I settled into the rhythm of the place the way I always do in a new position. I learned where everything was. I identified the maintenance issues that needed attention. A section of guttering on cell block C that had come away from the wall, a broken window on the ground floor of the administrative wing that needed boarding. A section of flooring in cell block, a upper tier that had become soft and needed cordoning off. I was methodical about it. Have always been methodical. It is how I work. It is how I stay calm in unfamiliar environments. Focus on what needs doing. Make a list. Work through the list. The building during the day was exactly what I expected. Cold, dimly lit from the barred window, smelling of concrete, an old metal, and a faint underpinning of something. I could not quite identify. Something that reminded me faintly of soil after rain, petrichor. They call it, except this was not quite, that this was something underneath that smelled something older. I did my rounds at 10 and 3 as instructed. Cell block A, then B, then flower tiers, then up with the yard, then back to the office. The cell blocks were long and silent and dark, beyond the reach of my flashlight, the cells on either side open or sealed, with rusted doors, empty, all of them empty, nothing but old bed frames and the occasional remnant, a shoe, a torn piece of clothing, a stack of old paperback books, swollen and distorted with moisture. I walked the rounds and found nothing and heard nothing and felt nothing beyond the ordinary discomfort of being alone in a very large, very dark, very cold building at 3 a.m. The end of the 3rd day, I had begun to think the rules were the product of an unwell Menda caretaker who had spent too long alone and had begun to populate the silence with things that were not there. I did not dismiss the rules. I followed them exactly. But I had begun to feel that following them was more about respecting the psychology of whoever had written them than about any genuine need. I understand now how wrong I was. The fourth night corrected that understanding permanently. Was doing my 10 p.m. round cell block lower tier. I had cleared the lower tier without incident and was climbing the stairs to the upper tier. The upper tier of cell block B was identical in layout to the lower, say, long corridor with cells on either side. 52 cells in total on the upper tier doors, rusted in various states of open or closed. My flashlight moving steadily. Ahead of me was perhaps 15 cells into the upper tier, roughly a quarter of the way down the corridor. When I heard it, it was faint, coming from further down the tier, perhaps from the far end, perhaps from somewhere in the middle. The acoustics of the lock made it difficult to locate precisely. A voice, male, older, sounding, counting 1. Said with the flat steadiness of someone counting something important, something they need to keep track of. 2. I stopped walking. The voice continued. 3, 4, completely calm, completely steady, like a metronome, like someone who has been counting for a very long time and has developed a rhythm that will not be interrupted. 5. I stood completely still, my flashlight pointing down the corridor. The beam did not reach the far ends, just darkness. Beyond a certain point. 6, 7. I became aware that I was holding my breath. I made myself breathe. 8, 9, 10, and then silence, complete silence. I stood in that silence for what felt like a very long time, probably 30 seconds. My mind was doing something I recognized from years of working in empty buildings. It was trying to find an explanation. Settling sounds waned through broken windows. My own imagination, the way the mind constructs patterns from random noise and darkness. 30 seconds, and then it started again. 1, 2, 3, steady, patient, unhurried. I remembered Rule 3. Leave cell block B immediately. Do not return until your next scheduled round. I turned around. I walked back toward the stairs, not fast, just walking. The counting continued behind me as I walked. 4, 5, 6. I reached the stairs. I went down. I went through cell block B lower tier without stopping. I went through the door into the yard corridor. I went to the office. I sat down at the desk. I looked at the rules on the table in front of me. Rule 3. If you hear counting coming from cell block B, upper tier, do not count. Along, do not call out. Do not try to locate the source. Leave immediately. I had followed the rule. But sitting there in the office with the silence pressing, and around me the question that had been sitting at the back of my mind since I first read the rules pushed itself forward. Why does it matter if I count along? What is the significance of that specific instruction? What happens to someone who does not follow? ID did not have an answer. I called the number on the wall. The woman answered on the second ring. I told her what I had heard. She asked if I had followed the rule. I said yes. She said good. She said the counting was normal. She said it would happen regularly. She said as long as I followed the rule, there was nothing to be concerned about. I asked her what would happen if someone counted along. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that has happened. Before I waited, she said the caretaker who was here before the one who wrote the rules, he counted along on his first week. Before the rules existed, I asked what happened to him. She said he did not leave. I said nothing for a moment. Then I said, "What do you mean he did not leave?" She said, "He is still on. The upper tier of cell block BHE has been there for a long time. Now he is the one counting." I sat very still at the desk in the caretaker office, looking at the phone in my hand. She said, "Get some sleep. Mr. Marsh, follow the rules. I will answer if you need to call." She hung up. I sat in the office until dawn. The first month passed. I followed every rule exactly. The counting happened regularly 2 or 3 times a week, always on cell block. The upper tier, always the same steady male voice, always beginning from. When I always left immediately on the 9th day, I found food in the kitchen, a bowl covered with a cloth, sitting on the counter. Rule 5, I did not lift the cloth. I picked up the bowl. I carried it outside. I walked it to the far side of the perimeter fence. I set it down in the weeds without looking at what was under the cloth. I went back inside. My hands were steady. I was proud of that. What my hands did not show was that the bowl had been warm, not room temperature. Warm the way food is warm when it has just been prepared. I had been in the kitchen 45 minutes before the counter had been empty. Someone had put that bowl on the counter in the 45 minutes. I had been elsewhere in the building. I was the only person in the building. I followed Rule 5, and I did not think about it any more than I had Toon. The 11th night, cell 14 spoke to me for the first time. I was doing my 3 a.m. round cell block, a lower tier. I had done the lower tier dozens of times by that point, and had heard nothing from cell 14, no voice, nothing. I had begun to think perhaps whatever Rule 6 referred to had moved on or had decided I was not worth addressing. I was wrong about that. Toei was walking past cell 14. The door was rusted half open, just wide enough that a person could slide through sideways if they wanted. Toei was not looking at the cell directly. Rule 6 specifies not looking directly into the cell. As you posse had my flashlight angled down at the floor as I walked, and from inside the cell a voice said, "Hey," just that single word. The way you say it to get someone's attention, casual, easy, like someone calling across a quiet room. My feet stopped. I was not aware of deciding to stop. My body just stopped. I stood outside cell 14. I did not look into the celly, looked at the wall. Opposite. Rule 6 said keep walking, but I had stopped. The voice said, "You are new low male conversational." If this was a normal exchange between two people who happen to be in the same place, I started walking again. The voice said, "You replaced Callum. How is old Callum doing?" I kept walking faster now, but not running. The voice said, "He never answered me either." And then it laughed, a quiet sound, completely human in its quality, warm, almost the kind of laugh that in any other context would make you want to know what the joke was. I walked off the lower tier and did not slow down until I was back in the office. I sat down. I breathed. I did not call the woman. I already knew what she would say. Follow the rules. You followed the rule. You are fine. I wrote it down in a notebook instead. Everything the voice had said, the exact words, the exact tone, the laugh. I have that notebook still. I look at it sometimes. I need to remind myself that what happened at Harrow Creek was real and not something my mind constructed. In the dark week 3, I had developed what I can only describe as a working relationship with the rules. I followed them automatically, without deliberating, the way you learn to navigate a familiar space in the dark. You stop thinking about where the furniture is. Your body just knows. Do rounds at 10 and 3, leave cell block B when the counting starts. Keep walking past cell 14. Do not enter the yard when the lights are on dill. Not eat the food you find in the kitchen. The rules had become the rhythm of the place, and within that rhythm I had found a kind of equilibrium. I was sleeping reasonably well, was keeping up with the maintenance work during the day. I had repaired the guttering on cell block C. I had boarded the broken window. In the administrative wing I was methodical and careful, and I did not think too hard about the things the rules protected me from. And then the last Friday of the month arrived. Rule 7. Do not conduct 3 a.m. round at 2:45. Go to the office lock the door headphones on with audio playing. Do not remove until 4 a.m. Do not open the door until 4 a.m. He followed it exactly. I was in the office at 2:45. Door locked, headphones on, music playing at a volume that covered all external sound. I sat in the chair at the desk, and I waited. At 2:58, something knocked on the office door. I felt it more than heard it because of the headphones. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, slow. I did not move. The music kept playing. At 3:14, the door handle moved slowly, carefully. Someone or something on the other side, pressing the handle down to the point where the latch would release if the door were unlocked. Then, releasing it, the handle returned to its resting position. I watched this from across the room. My hands were in my lap. I kept them still through deliberate effort. The music kept playing. At 3:27, I became aware of something outside the small window to my left. I did not look at the window. I kept my eyes on the opposite wall, but at the very edge of my vision I could see that the quality of the darkness outside the window had changed. Something was close to the glass, something that displaced the darkness, the way a solid object displaces darkness. I kept my eyes on the opposite. Whaley did not turn my head. At 3:41, the quality of the darkness at the window returned to normal. Whatever had been there was gone. At 3:59, I turned off the music. At 4, I unlocked the door. The corridor outside was empty. I did my round cell blocks A and B and C, everything as I had left it except on cell block C. Lower tier, every cell door that had been rusted shut was now open, all of them. 12 doors in total, open, perfectly open. If each one had been carefully pulled wide and held there, I looked at those 12 open doors for a long time. Then I went back to the office, and I wrote down what I had found. I did not sleep for the rest of that night. Month 2, I had stopped questioning the rules entirely, not because I had stopped thinking, but because the questioning had become beside the point. The rules existed because the rules were necessary. Every rule had proven itself within the first month. I did not need to understand the mechanism. I needed to follow the instruction. This is a distinction that took me longer to reach than it should have. I am a practical person. I like to understand the reasons for things. I like systems that I can trace back to their source, and examine Harrow Creek required me to abandon that preference entirely, to simply trust and act. In the 14th night of month 2, the voice from cell 14 addressed me differently. I was passing on my 10 p.m. round, moving at a steady pace, not looking into the cell, and the voice said, "You have gotten good at this," not addressed to the air the way it had before addressed to me specifically, knowingly, as if it had been watching my progress and had reached a considered opinion. I kept walking. The voice said, "He watches you from D block, the one who lives there. He finds the new ones interesting. He is watching you right now." I was at the end of the lower tier by then, through the door, moving toward cell block B. I did not look back toward D Block Rule 2. Do not approach the door to cell Block D after dark under any circumstances. I had been following that rule from the first night. I had not gone near the door to D Block after dark, but I had seen it during the day, heavy steel door on the far side of the central yard padlocked, with a lock that looked newer than everything else in the facility, newer than the fence and the guard towers and the cell block doors, as if the lock had been replaced recently, as if keeping that door closed was an ongoing requirement, not a historical one on the third day of month. 2. I found the tin box. I was in the administrative wing, doing maintenance on a water pipe in one of the old offices. The pipe ran behind the wall, and I needed to access a junction that was behind a removable panel. I took the panel off, and there behind the pipe in the cavity in the wall was a small tin box, the kind you keep small things in tea or tobacco or sewing supplies. I sat back on my heels and looked at it for a moment. Then I took it out. It was not heavy inside. The tin was a notebook, slightly larger than a pocket notebook. The cover was plain inside. The cover in neat handwriting. It said, "For whoever comes next." I am writing this after 3 years in this place. I hope you find this before you need it. Read everything I set down on the floor of that office. The maintenance job forgotten. And I read. The notebook was written by a woman. She did not give her name, but from the way she wrote, it was clear she had been a caretaker here for 3 years, 3 years before the man who had written the rules on the table in the office, which meant this. Notebook predated the rules, which meant she had been here without them. The first entries in the notebook were from her early weeks at Harrow Creek. They read similarly to what I might have written myself at that stage. Observations about the building notes on the maintenance requirements, the particular quality of the silence, her first encounter with the counting on cell block B, upper tier, her first experience of finding food in the kitchen, her first time passing cell 14 and hearing the voice. She had not had rules to follow. She had not known what to do. She had made mistakes, several of them, none of which she described in detail, but the effects of which she described very clearly. There are things I did in my first months here that I will not write down. She wrote not because I am ashamed, but because writing them down would make them more real than they need to be, and I am trying very hard not to give things here more reality than they require. What I will say is that some paths once walked cannot be unwalked, and some conversations once begun cannot be ended without cost. You are reading this, and you have not yet made those mistakes. Then please do not make them. Do not engage with the voice in cell 14, not at all, not once, not with a single word. Do not count along with what you hear on cell block B, not even quietly under your breath. Do not investigate the lights in the yard. Do not go near D block after dark, and above all, do not be curious about what is in D block. Curiosity is the mechanism it uses. It cultivates curiosity the way a gardener cultivates soil, carefully, patiently creating the conditions in which something will grow. The thing in D block is patient in a way that is difficult to comprehend. It has been here longer than the prison, much longer. The prison was built on top of something that was already here, a fact that the original builders either did not know or chose to ignore. It does not experience time the way we do it, is not waiting in the way that we wait impatiently, aware of each passing moment. It simply exists, and when the conditions are right, when a person has been here long enough, when they have been worn down by the counting and the voice and the food in the kitchen, and the lights in the yard when their grip on. The normal world has loosened just enough then. It makes its offer. The notebook continued with the description of the offer. What it had offered her, she had been here for 2 years when it first spoke to her directly, not through the counting voice or the voice in cell 14 directly from the direction of D Block A. Voice that she described as feeling like it came from inside her own skull and outside it simultaneously. It had offered her the thing she wanted most in the world. She did not say what that thing was, but she wrote, "I will not pretend the offer was not tempting. It was the most tempting thing I have ever been offered, because it knew exactly what to offer it, knew things about me that no one in the world knew, not my family, not my closest friends, not anyone. It knew the thing I had never said out loud to another living person. It offered that thing to me wrapped in the most convincing possible terms, with the most compelling possible logic, and I sat in my office for the rest of that night, not sleeping, fighting with myself, because part of me, large part, wanted to say yes. She had said no. She wrote about how she had said no, about how it had felt like climbing out of cold water, effortful, exhausting, against the pull of something strong and cold and patient. She had said no, and the next morning she had begun writing the rules. She had spent the next year refining them, testing them against her experience, revising them, until she had 10 rules that she believed would protect whoever came after her. Then she had hidden the notebook in the wall and left the rules on the table in the office and gone home. The last page of her notebook said this: "I am leaving tomorrow. I have been here 3 years. I followed the rules I made for myself. In year 2, and they kept me safe. Whoever comes next, please find this notebook. Please read it. Please understand that the rules on the table in the office are not the work of a frightened person. They are the work of someone who learned, who made every mistake that could be made and survived them, and who wants you to survive to the thing in D Block will make you an offer. It always does it. Is patient enough to wait for exactly the right moment, when you are tired, when you have been here long enough that the outside world feels slightly unreal, when the offer it makes sounds more reasonable than it should. That moment comes. Remember this: whatever it offers, whatever it knows about you, whatever it promises, the answer is no, not maybe, not let me think about it. No, immediately and completely, and then walk away, and then call the number on the wall, and then lock the door, and then put on your headphones. No, that is all you have to do. Just Noy sat on the floor of that office for a long time after I finished reading. Outside the window, the gray March sky had turned into gray April sky without me noticing the change. I had been reading for hours. I put the notebook back in the tin box. I put the tin box back in the wall cavity. I replaced the panel. I went back to the caretaker office. I picked up the phone. I called the number. The woman answered. I told her about the tin box. I told her about the notebook. I told her I had read everything. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How are you feeling, Mr. Marsh?" I said. I was processing. She said that was a reasonable response. I asked her if she knew about the notebook. She said yes. I asked how she knew. She said, "Because I wrote." Heidi said nothing for a long moment. She said, "I was a caretaker here before the man who wrote the rules on the table. He found my notebook. He used it to write the rules. He was here for 2 years, and then he made his choice and left." I asked what she meant by made his choice. She said, Everyone who stays long enough is eventually offered a choice, he. He asked what his choice was, she said. That is not my story to tell, I asked, if he was still at Harrow. Creepypasta, she said, no, he left. What left might mean, in that context, was a question I decided not to ask. Not that night, she said, you are doing well, Mr. Marsh, better than most at this stage. Follow the rules, both sets. Now call me if you need to. She hung up. Month 3. The building changed around me in month 3, or I changed around the building. I am still not certain which. The encounters with the counting and the voice in cell 14 had become so routine that they barely registered as events anymore. They were simply part of the structure of the nights at Harrow Creek. The way shift changes and radio checks are part of the structure of other night jobs. I heard the counting, and I left cell block, bypassed cell 14, and the voice spoke, and I kept walking. Lights in the yard came on, and I stayed in the office. I found food in the kitchen, and I removed it without examining it. Did not go near D block after dark. I followed Rule 7 on the last Friday of the month. The building felt in some way as if it was settling around me. If my presence had been noted and assessed and accepted, I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like something a person says when they have been alone too long and have started to attribute intention to things that have none. I thought about that myself in month 3. I was careful about it. You watched my own thinking the way you watch a wound. For signs of infection, looking for the point where reasonable observation became unreasonable attribution, where healthy solitude became unhealthy isolation. I wrote in my notebook every night. I called the woman every week. I maintained the discipline of the rounds and the rules, and I tried to stay connected to the reality of the world outside Harrow Creek. The apartment I was paying rent on, the maintenance work, I would return to the people who existed outside these walls. It helped, not completely, but enough. On the 17th night of month 3, I broke a rule, not deliberately. I want to be clear about that. I did not make a conscious decision to break the rule, but the breaking of it happened nonetheless, and the reason for that is something I think about still. I was passing cell 14 on my 3 a.m. round, walking at my usual pace, flashlight angled at the floor, not looking at the cell, and the voice said his name was Thomas. I did not stop. I did not respond. The voice said the one who wrote the rules on the table. His name was Thomas. He was here for 2 years. He was a good man. He did not deserve what happened to him. And I stopped. Not a pause, a full stop. My feet ceased moving, and I stood outside cell 14. In the dark, I was not looking into the cell, but I had stopped the voice that I liked. Thomas, I watched him the whole time he was here. He made it to 2 years, and then he said yes, and then he was gone. I started walking again. The voice said the one you talked to on the telephone, the woman. She said no, and she left. That is why she is the one answering the phone. That is why she has been answering it for 30 years, because she said no and walked away, and she is still carrying that, still making sure someone is there. When the next one calls, I was at the end of the lower tier, through the door, into the connecting corridor. I leaned against the wall and breathed. I had stopped. I had not spoken, but I had stopped, and stopping was a form of responding. I knew that I knew that. The moment my feet stopped moving, Rule 6 said keep walking. It did not say keep walking unless you hear something interesting. It said keep walking, full stop. I went to the office. I called the woman. I told her I had stopped outside cell 14. That I had not spoken, but I had stopped and listened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What did it say?" I told her what it had said about Thomas, about her, about why she was still answering the phone. Another silence, longer this time. Then she said, "It is not wrong about the broad shape of things." Thomas said yes, and he is gone. I said no, and I left, and I have been answering this phone for a long time. But Mr. Marsh, it is not telling you those things because it wants to inform you. It is telling you those things because it wants you to feel something. What does it want me to feel? I said. She said, connected. Wants you to feel connected to the history of this place, to Thomas, to me, to the caretakers before me, because connection is the precursor to trust, and trust is the precursor to yes. Do you understand? I said I understood. She said, "Do not stop outside cell 14. Again I said, I would noti have kept that promise. Month 4, on the 4th day of month 4, I began to notice something I had not noticed before, something subtle enough that it had been happening for some time before I became aware of it. Building was quieter during the day than it had been in the first months. Not the ordinary quiet of an empty building, something more specific, the sounds that large old buildings make during the day, the settling and creaking, and the way weather moves through gaps in old structures. These sounds had been present in my first weeks at Harrow Creek, unremarkable, normal. In month 4, they had diminished, disappeared, but diminished, as if something in the building was paying attention during the day. Now, not just at night, as if whatever had been content to observe me only after dark had extended its observation into the daylight hours. I noticed this, and I wrote it down, and I called the woman, and I told her. She said, "Yes, that happens. It means you have been here long enough." I asked what it meant that I had been here long enough. She said, "It means the offer is coming soon." I asked how she knew. She said, "Because that is how it works. It watches you during the day and makes sure it knows everything about you, and then when it is certain, it knows what to offer. It speaks." I asked her if there was anything I could do to prepare. She said, "You have already done it. You know the answer. You have known the answer since you read the notebook. The answer is no. Whatever it says, the answer is no." I said yes. She said, "Get some sleep. I will be here when you call." The offer came on a Tuesday night in the 5th week of month 4. I was doing my 3 a.m. round cell block, a lower tier. I had passed cell 14. Nothing from the voice that night. I had walked through the connecting corridor. I was crossing the far edge of the yard on my way to cell block band. A voice spoke, not from cell block B, not from cell 14, from the direction of D block, from across the yard. The first thing I noticed about this voice was that it did not sound like it was coming from across the yard. It sounded like it was coming from directly beside me, from just behind my left shoulder. And the second thing I noticed was that it was not a frightening voice. It was calm, warm, almost the kind of voice that immediately makes you think of someone trustworthy, someone who knows what they are talking about, someone who has your best interests in mind. It said, "Daniel," just my name. The way it said, it suggested it had known my name for a very long time. The way you say the name of someone you know well, not announcing it, just using ID. Kept walking. It said, "You have done very well, better than most who come here. I can see how careful you are, how precise. It is impressive." I kept walking. It said, "I want to show you something that is all just one thing, something that no one outside this place has ever seen, something that would Answer the question that has been underneath everything else your whole life. I was almost at the door to cell block bit said. You had always wanted to understand why things are the way they are, why the world is structured the way it is, why some people suffer and others do not, why effort and goodness are not reliably rewarded, why the things we love are so fragile and the things we fear are so persistent. You have wanted to understand that your whole life. I reached the door to cell block BMY. Hand on the handle, it said, I can show you, not tell you. Show you it will take less than a minute, and you will never wonder again about any of it. You will simply know, and knowing will not hurt you. It will help you. You will leave here tomorrow, and you will spend the rest of your life with that knowledge, and it will make everything easier, everything clearer, everything more bearable. I opened the door I went through. I let the door close behind me, and I said nothing, and I stood there in the entrance to cell block B for 30 seconds, breathing, just breathing, and the voice did not come through the door. It stayed on the other side, and I understood something in that moment that I had not understood before. It could not follow me past certain thresholds. The cell block doors were thresholds. The office door was a threshold. That was why the rules specified going to the office and locking the door, not just for psychological comfort, but because the office door was a threshold it could not cross. I went through the rest of my round. I went to the office. I locked the door. I called the woman. She answered immediately, as if she had been sitting by the phone. I told her what had happened, everything it had said, how it had sounded, how the offer had been constructed. She listened without speaking. When I finished, she said, You said nothing. Said nothing, she said. You went through the door. I said yes. She said that was the right thing to do. The doors are barriers. You know that now. I said yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, How are you feeling? I thought about it honestly. I said, I am fine. I am more fine than I expected to be. She said, That is because you were ready. Thomas was not ready when it spoke to him. He was surprised. When you are surprised by something that beautiful and that perfectly targeted, it is very hard to say no in the moment. You had been preparing for months. You knew it was coming. You knew what to say. I said nothing. She said, That is the same thing I said. It offered me understanding. She said, I know. I said, How do you know what it offered? Mesh said, Because that is what it offered me. 2-way silence. Then she said, It knows what each person wants most. For me, it was understanding. For Thomas, it was something else. For every caretaker, it is the specific thing that person has wanted their whole life, that they have never found, that they have stopped believing they will ever find, and it offers it to them wrapped in the most credible possible terms, in the most compelling possible voice, at the most vulnerable possible moment. I said, Does it actually have what it offers? Could it actually give? I'd a long pause. She said, I have thought about that question for 30 years. I do not know the answer. I chose not to find out. That is all I can tell you. Get some sleep, Mr. Marsh. The hard part is over. I said good night. She said good night. I went to sleep. Month 5. The offer came 3 more times in month 5, each time different, each time more precisely targeted than the last, as if each refusal had given it new information about me, new angles to approach. From the second offer was understanding again, but framed differently, not abstract understanding of why the world is the way it is, but specific, personal, the understanding of a specific situation in my life that I had never been able to make sense of a thing that had happened when I was 23 that I have never spoken about to anyone. It knew about it, not the surface of it, the interior of it, the part I had never shown anyone. It offered to explain it to me, to make it make sense, to give me peace around ID. Went through the door to cell block A and said nothing. The third offer was different in kind, not understanding, something else, something I will not describe, something it had no right to know about, and no right to offer. I went through the door to the connecting corridor and said nothing. The fourth offer, the last offer it ever made me, was simple. It said, you can leave tomorrow or you can stay. If you stay, I will teach you how to see this place as it really is, not as an abandoned building, as what it actually is, what it has always been. You will see it clearly for the first time, and it will be the most extraordinary thing you have ever experienced, and you will never want to leave. I went through the door to the office. I locked ID. Called the woman. I told her about the fourth offer. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, that is the one that got Thomas. I said, he said yes to that one. She said yes. I said, and what happened? She said he saw it, whatever it is. He saw the place as it really is, and he did not want to leave, and he is still there. I asked, where is he? Is he in the building C? Said he is indeed, block. He has been there since the second year of his time here. He is not Thomas anymore. Not exactly. He remembers being Thomas, but he is also something else now, something the place has made him into. I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, is that what happened to the caretaker before youth, one who was counting on cell block B upper tier? She said, yes, he was here before me. He made a different mistake. He counted alone in his first week, before he understood. Now he counts forever. I said nothing. She said, you are going to be fine, Mr. Marsh. You have said no 4 times. It will not offer again after 4. That is its limit. With any one person, 4 offers, 4 refusals, and then it accepts the result and waits for the next one. You are safe. Now I said, how much longer do I need to stay? She said, that is up to you. There is no required term. You can leave whenever you choose. I said, I am going to leave at the end of this week. She said, good. Said, I am going to write something before I leave, record everything that happened, everything I know, for whoever comes next. She said, that is what all the careful ones do. I said, were there many careful ones? She said, enough, not as many as I would like, but enough. I said, good night. She said, good night, Mr. Marsh. Take care of yourself. When you leave, it takes time to readjust. The world outside will feel slightly unreal for a while. That is normal. It passes. I said, thank you. She said, thank you for saying no. I spent my last 3 days at Harrow Creek, writing everything I have just told you in a notebook, which I put in the tin box with the other 2 notebooks, which I put back in the wall cavity in the administrative wing office, behind the loose panel for whoever comes next. And on the table in the caretaker office, I left a note on top of the original rules. The note said this: there are 2 sets of rules in this building, the ones on this table, and a tin box hidden behind a loose panel in the second office in the administrative wing. You will need to remove the access panel for the water pipe to find it. Inside the tin box are 3 notebooks. Read all 3, follow all the rules from all the notebooks, and when the time comes, when the voice from D block speaks to you directly, and it will speak to you, remember that the answer is no, not. Eventually not, after you have thought about it. Now, immediately, completely, without hesitation and without curiosity, just know, and then walk through the nearest door, and do not stop walking until you are outside. I left on a Friday morning, early, before the gray light had fully arrived. I put my bag in the car. I drove down the cracked road away from the building. I did not look in the rearview mirror, not because I was afraid of what I might see, but because I had made a decision in those last days at Harrow Creek that I would not carry more of that place with me than I had toy, would carry the memory, the knowledge, the nights and the rules and the voice and the offers and the woman on the phone. I would carry all of that because it is mine and it is real. And pretending otherwise would be a kind of dishonesty. I am not willing to practice, but I would not carry the weight of looking back. I drove away. I did not look back, and I kept driving until the building was gone, and there was nothing around me but gray land and gray sky and the road going forward, and the ordinary world waiting at the end of it. My name is Daniel Marshai, was the caretaker of Harrow Creek Correctional Facility for 5 months and 12 days. I followed the rules, all of them, both sets every time without exception. I said no 4 times, and I came home. If you are the next caretaker, you are reading this or listening to this in some form I cannot anticipate. Here is what I want you to know. The rules work. The woman will answer. When you call, the offers will come, and the answer is no, just no, and then keep walking until you are outside and the door is behind you, and you can breathe the ordinary air again, and hear the ordinary sounds, and remember that the world out here, imperfect and fragile and bewildering as it is, still yours. It is still real, and it is still worth coming back to. Promise you that it is worth coming back to.